Can everyone hear me? Hello? Can anybody hear
I
me?
can hear you.
Oh, you
Yeah.
can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Let me start off by, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me start off by taking attendance. So attendance here. All right. Sorry, I can't make it into class today. I don't have any help at home to take care of my kids. So I am here working remote, but I will be in class next week. Let me take attendance. Ella?
Here.
How about Veronica?
Here.
Isabel?
Here.
Rebecca?
Here.
Lindsay?
Here.
Greta?
Here.
Abby?
Here.
Ashley?
Here.
Brianna?
Here.
Carl?
Here.
Alexa?
Here.
Gabriella?
Here.
Mary?
Here.
James?
Here.
And Rahaf.
Here.
Okay. All right. So everyone's in class. I've got a full attendance. Oh, great. Okay. So this week we're going to be focusing on the reflected ceiling plan of our project. I've got a couple hours before I have to pick up another child, but I want to walk you through how to do this. So this week the focus is going to be sheet. Let me pull it up here. Sheet 1.4 and 1.5. This is the ceiling command in Revit. So if I zoom into this, you'll see all the different areas of the floor plan that have been where ceilings have been added. And so there's two reflected ceiling plans because this drawing here, 1.4, covers the first floor, and the ceilings only exist above the on either side of the reading room, the meeting room over here, the washroom, and above the main entrance here. So the underside of that roof is going to get a ceiling here. Ignore these lines here, these notations here. These belong to the floor plan, and that layer was not turned off in AutoCAD. Here, these meeting rooms also get ceilings, and whenever you see a room with a big X through it, that means that there's no ceilings in those areas. So you simply leave those areas alone. Nothing's happening in those areas. And again, if you want to review what required, just simply look at 8.4 and 8.5 to show you where the ceilings belong. There's also have little tags here, level tags that shows you whether it's acoustical tile ceiling or ACT, and gypboard ceilings and the heights of those. So these are both 11 to 4. So this ceiling here and that ceiling there are basically in the same height. This canopy above the security desk is also going to be another area we're going to build. And this is the highest ceiling. This is the underside of the upper roof. So this will get a ceiling as well up here. Let me launch my Revit before I forget. So if we take a look at the photographs, and you guys can see my screen, correct? The photograph up here?
Yes.
All right. So this is the security desk, but as we walk into the front door, you'll see the security desk over here to our left right there. So there's the canopy above the security desk. We'll build that. And then above it, up high, on the underside of the upper roof, there's another ceiling there. Same style of ceiling. These are these orange perforated metal panel ceilings up here and here. And you can also see that different parts of the library have acoustical tile. So for example, here, this is the children's room. Across the other side of the reading room over there, excuse me, is the adult reading area of the adult book stacks. And they both have the same ceiling. They're both 2x2 acoustical tile ceilings. And you see here on the edge of the opening, there's a piece of drywall right there. And then behind the drywall is 2x2 gridded ceiling. So there's only a couple types of ceilings in this library. Bathrooms are standard, just gypboard ceilings. Up here at the top, we're not going to build this light cove, but you can simply make a gypboard ceiling up there. And you can see even these entrances into the meeting rooms, they also have a little bit of gypboard right there on either side. So again, like any project, this semester, take a look at the photographs to better understand what you're building. This is the main entrance, and obviously there's a ceiling up there above the main entrance. And I'm going to assume these panels here are 2x6. So we'll have to make a custom panel of that size to be placed on the underside of that lower ceiling. That actually the underside of the lower roof is what's happening here. Again, you're going to ignore things like light fixtures and diffusers and what have you. We're only focusing on the ceiling materials itself. We're not doing light fixtures or anything fancy. You can see the canopy, the overhang here projects out 2 feet from the building on both sides, and that gets a ceiling. So that ceiling goes from inside to outside. So it's up there at the underside of wherever the height is of the highest most roof. Okay. So with that being said, let me launch the current project and we'll go over it. Any questions about this next assignment? Y'all understand what we're doing? And again, chat yes or no. You don't have to use your speaker, but please chat your questions yes or no, so I know everyone's still in class and you're still in attendance. Sometimes my speakers might become disabled, so I want to make sure I don't lose my connection with you all. And so last week we put together a sheet of floor plans, so A11 and A16. So this is a copy of the first floor plan. Again, from this point forward, you should not see the AutoCAD drawings in any of your views. So anytime you see your AutoCAD drawing, you're doing something wrong. So I would hide that AutoCAD file everywhere. So if you go to the insert command here, a quick way of hiding the AutoCAD file from throughout your entire project is to go into insert, manage links, and just simply disable it. So under CAD formats, take your AutoCAD file and unload it, so it does not show up anywhere in your set. The floor plan should also be set to a course level detail. So for example, these materials inside the wall should not be here. So if I double click on this view, it turns on the view where I can select objects in the view, and I can change this to fine course, not fine, course. There's a quick mistake here. This column grid line should also be down here. I'm just going to line that up. Align to here with this. Okay. And then double click outside in the white to go back to your sheet. Similar to AutoCAD, paper space and model space. So this is one sheet you should have. It should look exactly like this, which is similar to our CD set. And note what things are on and off in the CD set. And the finished floor plan set should just have the floor plan patterns, but you don't need the grid lines because they don't exist in the drawings. Again, if you're not sure what to include or not include, take a look at the drawings. This drawing here does not show columns. You only have patterns. So that's all you should show in your work. So I open this view. I don't see any of these little symbols here. I'm going to hide those categories. And there. This is what the finished floor plan. So we're going to add 2 more sheets, and you only owe me those 2 sheets. And creating ceilings is similar to creating floor plans. The same thing. You might have to make a unique pattern that appears in a certain way in your design for a ceiling, like you've done here for the floor. The exact same steps. So if I go back to the first floor plan right here, ceiling plans are beneath it here, and here says the top of the first floor, which is typically the same name as the floor plan. And if I double click on it, it shows me the reflective ceiling plan. You'll notice that, let me just get rid of some of this stuff here that belong here. You'll notice that on this drawing, windows windows appear because they must have intersected the cut line through the building. But ceilings are different than floor plans. Floor plans cut through the building at 4 feet when it creates a floor plan. Ceilings cut through the floor plan at 7'6". And I know that because if I go into here and I go to the view range, you'll see it's cutting through the building at 7'6". So because 7'6" is typically taller than a door, doors will disappear. And obviously, if they do appear, because maybe you have some extremely tall doors for whatever reason, you can simply go to VG and you can turn off the doors by unclicking doors. If you don't want to see them at all, they shouldn't appear here because I don't believe there's doors that are taller than 7'6" in this project. At least I don't think there are. And just make sure you're consistent with, all these objects here should be in alignment, and they should be turned on, and they should look, again, like, this is kind of mix and match, either they're on at the top or on at the bottom, not both. So the ceiling command, if I were to zoom into this room here, so let's take a look at this. We got this room here that we want to do a ceiling in. So this is the area we're looking at. Up here in the upper left. Okay, so there's a 2x2 ceiling in there, acoustical tile. And it says it's 11'4" above the floor. So if I go into Revit, now launch ceilings, you've got a couple ceiling styles that are available here in the type selector. You've got a 2x2 acoustical tile ceiling, you've got 2x4 acoustical tile ceiling, and you got gypboard. Now, when you can use 1 or 2 commands to draw the ceilings. You can either do automatic ceiling or sketch a ceiling. But don't do it more than once, because you could accidentally duplicate the ceiling and put one on top of another, which is obviously a bad idea. So if I go over here and choose 2x2, automatic ceiling can find the perimeter of a room. So it's looking for walls, windows, and doors to surround a room. And if it finds it, it'll highlight it for you. For example, here. And if it's there surrounding the room that you're after, and I click, it'll put an automatic ceiling in there, just like this one. But it doesn't work everywhere, because this one here, you can see it's trying to put one in this room here, but it finds the walls at the edge of the entire library, which is not right. Click. See, this ceiling's not supposed to be here, at least not that big. Escape to get out of this command. Grab the ceiling along the edge, tab, click, and then delete it because it doesn't belong out there, because it had no walls to keep it contained in an area. So this area here is missing a wall because this is where the beam is, this is 11'4", and so the ceiling escaped. And it grows until it finds walls, windows, and doors to contain it in an area, like the hatch pattern in AutoCAD. So if you've got that problem, you should resort to the other option. ceiling sketch where you draw the ceiling. So for example, if I grab a rectangle here and I go from this corner here and I pick the corner of this window, then that's the extent of the ceiling. If I hit accept, then there's a ceiling, another 2x2 acoustical tile ceiling. So either you're drafting the ceiling or you're letting Revit automatically find it for you. But again, you got to make sure it doesn't escape the room that you're trying to place the ceiling in. If I click in, I can click on the ceiling itself by grabbing the edge of where the ceiling is located, like an edge of a wall, and use tab to find it, click, and there it is. And then I can edit the boundary, and I can change the design of this outline here. And I have to accept it, like the walls, like the floor command, like the roof command, like edit profile. They expect you to accept or decline the work you're doing. And so I can do it here. This has to be completely enclosed. If I hover over one line and use tab, you can see it's completely enclosed. So it'll create a ceiling for me. If not, you got to check your drafting and make sure it's accurate. You notice here, it also highlights these grid lines if the ceilings had grid lines. So I can click on a grid line and it launches a ceiling over here. And it also lets me change the height of the ceiling above the first floor. And so if I want a 2x4 ceiling, I would use this one. There's a 2x4 ceiling. If I click on the line here, I can change it to back to the 2x2. And so you're going to place ceilings in these rooms based on the reflective ceiling plan in the drawing set. Take a look at the drawing set. Always look at the drawing set to describe what area is going to get what type of ceiling. Ceiling can align. Like I can line up this ceiling with this wall. You use the align command or AL and just hover over the wall, click, and then choose the line, and it'll move it there. I can align with this wall with this, or align this wall with this, and it moves the ceiling around. I can even do it between ceilings. AL is for align with this edge, this, align with this edge, this, and it kind of looks like the pattern is continuing through the wall, although these are all independent ceilings. AL, line up with here with this, line up with this is going to have to be here with this. So now it looks like all these are continuous, but each room gets its own ceiling. So any questions so far with that part of the work? Yes or no? Let me, and obviously chat me a question or turn on your speaker if you have any questions regarding this. But it's, it's pretty simple. It's similar to a floor, but the floor doesn't have the automatic floor command. So you have to draft them yourself, which is like sketching a ceiling. But the ceiling has that tool. It's very quick. Oh, escape. Now let's talk about, for example, the bathrooms. Like, let's say the bathroom here is supposed to, I mean, I see some problems here. I think this wall is connected to this wall, and this wall needs to line up with this beam, and this one needs to line up with this beam. There's some problems with this project. But these bathrooms get chipboard ceilings, and you can see, again, where they belong, looking at the reflective ceiling plan here. And unfortunately, on this drawing, they don't really make it explicit what areas are chipboard besides the note here. But there's no note here. There's a note here, for example. There's a note here, for example. But I prefer to have a chipboard ceiling with stipple pattern, like a sand pattern, like an AutoCAD sand pattern. So I know there's a ceiling there. Because if it's white, I don't know if it's a mistake. Someone forgot to add the ceiling in those areas, or what's going on. They don't have the big X through it. This big X means there's no ceiling above here, so you leave those areas alone. But these are chipboard ceilings. This hallway is a chipboard ceiling, and there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling in these washrooms. These closets have ceilings, although they don't call them out here. But there's no X's here. This is the entrance into the meeting room. Those get ceilings. So it's hard to see where the chipboard's at. I'm not sure if there's a mistake or not. There's actually a ceiling here at the entrance, right outside the entrance doors here. And you can see that ceiling here. It's right there, that bulkhead. that's a ceiling with with a wall on both sides. There's a wall on this side of a certain height, maybe to the underside of that ceiling height here. Those seem to line up. The top of this seems to be the bottom of that. That's where the ceiling's at. That seems logical. And then inside the library, you can see that right here, right? So that's a ceiling that comes out and becomes a wall inside the library. And then on top of it, you can put a roof, or you can put another ceiling on top of this, so it's closed off, it's not open. That's up to you to decide what command you want to use. But the point I'm trying to make is that the gypboard ceilings are hard to spot. So what we're going to do is I am going to change the gypboard ceiling command, because if I look at this gypboard ceiling and I go to edit type, you'll see here that it's 4 1/4 inches thick. And then when you go to structure, you'll see why. So the bottom line, number 4, I'm standing here looking up at the ceiling. This is the bottom of the ceiling that's visible to the people inside the library. And it's a gypboard wall, and it's 5/8 of an inch thick. There's a metal stud above it. That's 3 5/8 inches thick. So together, these are 4 1/4 inches thick. That's how thick the ceiling is. But this gypboard material appears white here. Instead, it should have a pattern. Now, the gypboard should look a special way for the ceiling gypboard, but it shouldn't change the walls. The walls should be plain walls without any kind of pattern to it. But the ceilings should be a different pattern. And that is the norm. So if I grab this piece of gypboard here and I go a little button there, this is the materials library. And this gypboard, which is empty here, has no pattern to it. I'm gonna use a new copy of that and add a pattern to it so I can see it. I'm gonna call it gypboard ceiling. I'm gonna right click on this and duplicate, and then I'm gonna rename it, John's gypboard, wallboard ceiling. And then what I got to do is make sure, you always do this when you make a copy of the material, always go here to appearance and make sure the little hand here says 0. If it does not, then go over here to the far right, that little button there, looks like 2 pieces of paper. Click on that button, duplicate this asset, click on it, and it'll make sure this little hand says 0. Don't do any work until that hand says 0 for a copied material. And then here's my copy. And like the floor, we can change a copy's appearance under graphics. We can decide what it looks like under surface pattern, what I can see in the reflected ceiling plan, a floor plan elevation. This is where you do the work. You give it a pattern. So if I click here for pattern, I'm going to use drafting pattern. And I'm going to find, for example, sand. And hit OK. And so gypboard ceiling board will look like sand. And I've added it to my gypsum on wall stud ceiling type. And so I'll accept that. And then I will create a gypboard ceiling. I'll put it here. Click. And there it is. It has a little stipple pattern to it. And then I can put it here. And I can put it here, here, and here. And wherever else it belongs. And so there's the gypboard ceiling, and then you have to circle back and make sure the height is correct. So again, put your mouse on the edge of the wall, use tab, click on it when it highlights, and then check. This should be 9 feet, not 8 feet. Tab, click. Well, make sure you use tab. That should be 9 feet. I'm not sure how big these are or how high they are, and it tells me here. Looks like this is at 11 feet. I'm assuming this is at 9 feet because the offices are at 9 feet. And so you just put your mouse on the edge, tab, until you click on the ceiling, and then choose 9 there. This one here, I think it's 11 feet. But again, look at the drawings, and you can see how tall these ceilings are supposed to be at. Am I right? 11 feet? Looks like it is 11 feet right there, 11 feet right there. Okay. And so that's what we're going to do for the interiors, and we're going to use the little area here for gypboard, don't forget. So if it doesn't have an X through it, it's going to get gypboard. just assume you see a white area in the ceiling, there's a chipboard ceiling in that area. So for example, here, if I try to do automatic, it's going to escape because there's a big hole right here. I can walk through that opening. So I want to do a ceiling that's drafted. I sketch it. I just draw a rectangle in there and just be done with it. This ceiling here is at, that ceiling's at 8 feet. Not supposed to be. And I suggest you start taking tours of your interiors to test the model. So if I were to stand with a little camera right here on the floor plan, stand here in front of that doorway looking into the bathroom, and you can see there's a ceiling floating down here, but the opening in the room is way up there. This is actually drawn wrong. This opening should go to the back side of that pier. So this is actually incorrect. But that ceiling is definitely wrong. That ceiling should be up at 11'4". The bottom of that ceiling is equal to the bottom of this opening. They line up. So launch a view to take a look at a certain area to make sure that it looks right. Always a good idea. On the ceiling plan, you'll see the ceilings start showing up right there. There's no need to put the chipboard on the bottom of this beam. However, if you want to announce the fact that the bottom of this beam is chipboard, I wouldn't put a ceiling there. All right, if I look in 3D here, you know, I'm not going to put a ceiling below this opening here, that 2-foot wide wall. That wouldn't be prudent. What you could do, if you want to show that's chipboard, make it obvious, then I would paint it. You can go modify and go to paint command and use your new and improved chipboard ceiling, the material we just made earlier, John's chipboard ceiling, and I paint it here. And now it's obvious that the bottom of that beam is chipboard on both sides of the reading room just by doing that. Because if it wasn't, it might be ambiguous. People might not know what that line is. They might think it's a steel beam or something. There's nothing describing it. Luckily, the drawings have a note that says that it's a chipboard beam. Right? It says chipboard, chipboard. This is chipboard. But it's always nice to add the material itself to that area. Right? So if we did this ceiling here above the main entrance, you can drop a chipboard ceiling over there and then later put a wall on top of it. Right? So looks like there's a ceiling here, so we can just draw a chipboard ceiling here, a sketch, right? Because I don't want it to take off and be the incorrect size, so I'm just going to draw it right there. You might want to go around that wall if you want to be more accurate, so I'm just going to trace that wall, split line this, so I can trim these edges here and make sure it traces the edge of those walls. And then I accept it. Check the height. It's 8 feet. It's supposed to be 8 feet. I don't know. So go to your floor plan and check. We can use next to the house is a little section tool, and I can just build a section right in front of there. Look at that door and make sure the ceiling's above the door. So where'd that ceiling go? Let's see. We're gonna have to go. Oh, a quick way of doing this is if this line here represents where the top of that mullion is, that's where the ceiling should begin. So what is that? This measurement here looks like the wall begins 11'4" and some fraction, 11'4". So the ceiling should be at 11'4". So this ceiling should be at 11'4". Now, if you didn't do it this way, you can also cut a section through it this way, right? You can do it easily. You can cut a section through this way. Maybe that one's easier. That one's easier. That one's a little more obvious. That'll show me where the height of the ceiling is plus the doorway, right? So there's the wall above, right up there. There's the wall above the door. There's a ceiling. It's in the wrong spot, so I'm going to align it up here with the bottom of there. And I'm going to turn off my line weights here for a second, and then I can see that it's going around that wall. I'm going to line it up more perfectly to there. So there's a ceiling lining up with the bottom of that the top of that mullion there at the entrance. If you don't know what you're looking at, don't forget, you can always launch this in 3D. This view is called this is my newest section, right? So if I look at sections, it's the last section number 2. So if you're not sure what you're looking at, go to 3D view, right click on the top of the view cube, launch orientation of the section called the section you want to look at. If you want to test and see what you're looking at and make sure it's clear, always do this. So there's the exact same view. But because I'm in 3D, I can hold shift mouse wheel and I can see here exactly what I'm going to get. A ceiling at the back of that wall. It looks like this jog that we're drawing here actually belongs way down here above the doorway. It didn't actually belong up here. So honestly, I would probably get rid of that jog. Edit boundary. Erase the lines you don't need. And then trim it and make it just a simple rectangle. Because it doesn't jog the way I expected it to. This little bump out here above the doorway made me think there was a jog, but there is no jog. This wall is flat. So there's a ceiling up there above the entrance. They line up nicely. Always take a tour of your model in 3D, just so you're clear what you're looking at. You'll become a much better interior designer this way. Because you don't want this to be ambiguous. You want to understand exactly what you're looking at. And so that's a section drawing that we were just looking at in 3D. Don't forget to turn this off when you're done. Section box, turn it off. So that's basically what this section is in a 3D area. So now I know what that is. And now I know it's right. Okay, is that helpful? Easy to understand?
Yes.
Does anybody have anything you want me to cover again? I just want to make sure all this information is clear. Anything you want me to demonstrate? You guys understand everything we're doing? I mean, don't be shy. This is, you guys are paying me a lot of money to teach you guys. No, you're not. No.
Can you show how you would do the bottom left corner reading room? The one with the weird ceiling shape?
This one here?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually 2 ceilings. So if we take a look at this drawing, there are 2 ceilings here. One ceiling's up high, and it's 13'2". This ceiling here that's crooked is at 11'4". So this is a ceiling that's floating below that ceiling. Kind of like what you see at Starbucks, except Starbucks typically doesn't have the high ceiling. It's exposed to the trusses, the rafters above. But they decided to put a ceiling up there up top and then put a lower ceiling beneath it, so you don't see all the mechanical, ducts and what have you above. So there's 2 ceilings here. So you design 2 ceilings, but there's a trick here, because if you look at this drawing, this is at 11'4", right there. All these offices back here and the corridor to get into the offices, those are at 9 feet. Those are typical 9-foot office space. And this ceiling, the highest point, is at 13'2". So this is 13'2", and this is 11'4", and these are 9 feet. So you got to make sure that when you tour that in 3D, it's all closed. You don't want to see any gaps in the walls, and look up above the ceilings. So you build 2 ceilings. I would recommend drawing the ceiling straight, vertical, and then rotating it with the rotate command, and then move it into position. All right, so let's take a look at that. So here, I mean, there's a mistake here. It looks like the curtain wall went too far. Right click, disallow the join always for curtain walls, and just drag that little dot over to the wall there. I don't know if that corner is supposed to look like that, but I don't think this actually has any mullions at all. These mullions aren't supposed to be here. Grab one mullion, right click, select all mullions on the host. That grabs them all, and delete. grab that mullion, right click, select all the mullions on the host, delete. There are no mullions in that wall. It's just joint lines in the glass. All right, this is the ceiling. So let's see if we can do it in automatic. Now, I don't know if it will allow it. It might escape, but let's try. Go ceiling. We'll do a 2x2 and we'll put it here. And it looks like it found the edges of the room. Click. There. Fine. It looks like it worked. Click on the edge of the ceiling and make sure it's the right height. 13'2". Okay, so we got 13'2" ceiling in here. This is 11'4". Let me just quickly let's just draft that, right? Sketch, because I know it's not going to work. It has a hole right here. I'm just going to go right to the edge of that glass and make a big ceiling here. 11'4", 11'4". Before I'm done, I'm going to accept that and accept the shape. And then these ceilings here are at like 9 feet. I don't know what they're doing here. That's a closet, so it's probably a 9-foot closet. That's a 9-foot ceiling. But let's say we go ahead and did that, right? Those can be automatic because I can see that they're closed, right? So I can make this one 9 feet and drop it in there, and I can make this one 9 feet also and drop it in there. Okay, so what do we have? Well, another ceiling here that's rotated 45 degrees. So you can draw this using the sketch command, and I can draw any shape here. No, I'm just sketching it out. You can draw any shape with ceilings and accept it. And there's your ceiling. Now, I don't know if that's right, but I want to wind up aligning this to make sure the edges are exactly 2 feet. And I can look at my design and copy it, right? This thing has 3 squares across the top. Each of these squares is 2 feet. So that is 6 feet. So you can see exactly how big this ceiling is by looking at the squares. So I can do the same thing here. I can click on this shape and go edit boundary. And by clicking on these edges, I can change these numbers to whatever I want. I can make that exactly 6 feet. What about this? That number there. I can make that number exactly whatever it needs to be. 8 feet or something. Whatever it becomes. This is in a weird spot. I don't need that measurement. I need the measurement from here to here. But it gives me this random dimensional way over there. Well, I can click on the little dot right there. Click and hold it. And drag it to wherever you want it to go. For example, this line. That number is more useful to me. 8 feet, that's useful. If I click this blue line is going to move. And there's a number there. Click on this one. It tells me from here to here, it's 11 feet. And again, if you don't like what you see, just click on the blue dot and move it around. And you can move it to a new location if that's important to you. But, I know that's wrong. That's not. As an example, I just sketched that out. All right, then click on it, use rotate and rotate it. I don't know what the angle is. Figure it out. And then move it. Right, stick it in there. There's the ceiling. Okay, so this is 11'4". 11'4". This one up here at top. Tab, tab, tab. Click. 13'2". This one here is 11'4". These are at 9 feet. What does that look like in 3D? Because you're not done. You got to make sure you tour everything you do in 3D. Because there might be something missed. Let me line up this nicely. Let me line up this edge to this edge to this. I can even line up this to this, for example, and this to this if I really wanted to. Not that you're ever going to see these together. This is much higher. But if I look at it in 3D, we're talking about this space back here. Okay. So do you see any problems with this? Does anybody see any problems? Carl, are you out there?
Yep. It needs
What-
to be 13'2", those walls.
Yeah. at least 13'2". In fact, I'd make them bigger. I'd make them at least 6 inches taller than the height of the ceiling. Exaggerate it. So this wall here needs to be taller, otherwise you're gonna gap right there. I can stand in that room and look over that wall. That's not good. So I'm gonna grab that wall and I'll make the top of the wall go up to 13. I'll make it go up to 14. There, I closed off that room. You see here, you've got some more gaps happening here. So this wall here needs to be taller. Maybe I'll make that one 14 feet. Actually, that's not the right number. This one here is going to be unconnected 14 feet. There. And there's a wall. Now, this is tricky. Look what happens here. This wall beneath it is glass. Now, obviously, you're not going to make the glass taller, right? You should not make the glass taller. The glass should not be up here. So you need to put a wall there. The wall that you want to put there is called a soffit. Because if you put a normal wall in there, it's going to be a waste of money, right? A normal gypboard wall has gypboard on both sides of a metal stud. You only want gypboard on one side, the side you're going to paint from inside this room. The back side, we don't really care what it looks like because it's above the ceiling. No one's going to see it. We don't want to pay for gypboard up there. It's above this ceiling here. This is an 11'4" ceiling. So I don't want to make glass up there. I want to put a little wall there. So luckily Revit has a wall. So I'll go to the floor plan here. And there's a little tiny wall you have to put there called a soffit. I'm going to draw it here on the floor. Architecture wall. And one of my walls in the type selector is called a soffit. And if I put a soffit right here, there's a soffit. It's a very skinny wall. And I go edit type and I can take a look at it. It tells me here it is a 1/2 inch piece of drywall with a metal stud behind it. But look at what the list is. This is at the top of the list of the exterior side. So currently, the metal stud is the side with the arrow. So we have to fix that. So when you click on the wall, you'll see the arrow here is favoring the side with the metal. And the opposite side is drywall. You want to make sure you put the opposite side inside the room. Does that make sense? Because I can see on the list of the structure, this is at the top of the list, which is the exterior side. The exterior side gets the arrow. Okay. Does that make sense, everybody? Right. So how would you put this wall on top of that glass? Again, cut a section through it. It's the easiest way to do this. Once you see it up there, then you can adjust it to align with the wall above here. I don't know where that beam is supposed to be. Now, I know it's going to connect to this wall, so I'm going to line it up there for sure. I can't see where that beam is. I'd like to see where that beam is because this wall runs into the beam above this room. So I can display that beam, and that's what underlay is for. Underlay lets me see other parts of the drawing, floor plans and reflective ceiling plans on any floor from this drawing I'm in right now. So I'm going to turn the underlay on. I'm going to be on the first floor, look between the first floor and the lower roof, looking up. And what is looking up? The reflective ceiling plan. And I can see this line here is the edge of the beam. I think that gypboard ceiling is going too far. It should line up with that beam, not go through the beam. But I know this should line up with this. I'm on the floor plan looking at the ceiling. Now, obviously, you never want to leave this thing on. It's only a technique you use to display information. You can see I can see the ceiling here. I can see all the other ceilings. It helps you coordinate. But again, turn it off when you're done. You don't want that thing on. Okay. So now I got the wall located, and I need to put it on top of that glass. So cut a section through it. And so here's the wall. I'm gonna hide annotations for a second. So here's the wall. It's really tiny. That's the soffit. And you can see the soffit here. Let me change the scale, make it like a little bigger, 1/4 inch scale. The soffit needs to sit on top of this glass and go up at least to the bottom of the ceiling. And so I'm just going to basically stretch it so it runs into the ceiling. Just going to line it. And the bottom of it lines up with the top of the glass, which is aligning it up to here basically. And then I line it up left and right, right? I use the align command, or I just use the move command. I can just grab it and move it with the move command here, grab the corner and move it to the corner of the ceiling. Now it's on top of the glass. And there's your soffit. Right? So that wall goes up and turns into a ceiling. And again, if you don't understand what you're looking at here, always take a look at it in 3D. But here, you'll see that there's the little soffit right there, and it's stopping that ceiling. And you can see the ceiling. I can see the ceiling is wrong because it's going through the wall. You see it? It went inside the wall. Not supposed to. So I can just simply edit the boundary of that ceiling. And you see here, I jogged around to the glass, but I wasn't supposed to. I'm just going to cut it off and erase. You can do some of this work in 3D if you want. You can just delete. It's supposed to go right across that wall straight and run into the back side of that wall there. You see, runs right into it, right there. Tour your models in 3D. Now's the time to make sure that you're well aware of everything. You can see here, I can spot that that's a problem right away. So who's wrong? Is the ceiling in the wrong place, or is the wall too tall? Well, check. If I grab that ceiling, it's supposed to be 11'4". It's only 8 foot. Well, that's easy. John can't mark that wrong. I moved it up to 11'4". This ceiling, 11'4". This ceiling, 11'4". Okay, now it looks more right. Right? It's at the right height. Right? So that's what you want to do when you tour the model. Any questions on any of any of that information I just covered? Hopefully you can see how these sections come in handy. Delete them when you're done. You don't need them anymore. But you can see how they're handy when you're trying to align things in height. Any questions? Yes or no? Feel free to turn on your microphones. If something's not clear, I can go over it again. Again, it's being recorded, so if you ask a question, you can then go back to the recording and see how things are done if you're not clear on a certain part of the work. So let me know if there's anything that's confusing you want me to cover again. Okay, so it looks like everyone understands the ceiling command explicitly. So you're good here. There is a ceiling up here. You know, there's a ceiling above the entrance here. I don't need that section anymore. I'm going to delete it, by the way. There's a ceiling up here, don't forget. Now, there's a mistake in the drawings. I'll call that out. I'll call attention to that right now. There is a ceiling right here. It's at 11'4", which I know is not right. Right, because when we looked at the building dimensions drawing in week 1, we can tell here that the bottom of that roof is 16.5 feet. So the ceiling is hanging below that bottom piece at 16.5 feet. An 11'4" ceiling will not work. It'll be floating in the air. So that's a mistake that you can quickly catch in Revit. The top of the ceiling needs to be at 16.5, attached to the underside of this roof on the outside of the building. So I'll go ahead and, quickly knock that out. I go to the reflective ceiling plan here. And let's say I don't know where that ceiling height is. Well, let's sketch it out. I'm going to assume that there's a setback here. I'll make it twice this distance here. This distance is 1'2". So it's 14 inches. So I'll make the ceiling start at double that. 28 inches away from the edge of the roof is where the ceiling is going to start. So I'll just simply draw a sketch, and I'll just pick the edges here. I'll just draw it 20 inches, 28 inches back. 28 inches, not feet. Pick line command. Oh, I'm choosing the wrong tool. That you're doing offset. The offset's right here. Offset 2'4". This is not correct. I'll draw it 8 feet. The offset is what I'm after. 2'4" offset. So I'm just gonna. That's 2'4", and 2'4" from that edge, and the rest should be simply just tracing. So you can just basically just trace around this ceiling as best you can, and then trim these edges with TR command. So just make sure it's perfectly drafted, like a floor, like a roof. You guys are used to this already. That's not drafted well. Okay. So I can hover over one line, tab, it highlights everything, click, and it looks like it's all closed. Don't seem to be any cracks. But the only way to know is when you hit accept. There's the ceiling. If I were to draw that 11'4", all it takes for you is to go into the floor plan and draw a perspective looking at it from the outside, and you can see right away it's in a bad spot. All right, can everybody see that? You can also see that these columns are wrong. These columns, when they disappear, that means something is built incorrect. There should be edges along these columns. These columns are all wrong. These columns can be attached to the bottom of this roof. This column can be attached to the bottom of this roof. This column can be attached to the bottom of this roof. And now they're at the right height. This is wrong. So you can attach the top of that. You can align the top of that to the bottom of that. Or if that's giving you grief, just cut a section through it. And you can see where the ceiling is, where the roof is. A line or AL to the bottom of the roof with the top of that ceiling. So that is going to be at a certain height above the first floor or above whatever level it's referencing. First floor, so it's a certain height above the first floor. Attach it to the bottom of that roof. Assuming you built this roof correctly, it's -2 feet. Well, it's 2 foot down. This roof is 2 foot thick, right? If I look at, you see it's 2 foot thick. It's correct. So put the ceiling on the underside of that. So when you look at it later in 3D, you see it's up there. It's at the bottom of that roof, exactly where it belongs, outside the building. You can kind of see it right there. Okay. So everyone clear on that? You got to make sure you check the heights, right, to make sure it's in the right spot. And it's okay that it hangs down below the roof for now, because we're not going to overly detail this. It's not going to be perfect. So the best we can do is attach it to the bottom of that ceiling, that roof there. Don't forget, when you're in perspective mode, you see how this is chopping off part of the model off in the distance. Make sure you turn off far clip active. Make sure that box is always turned off to show the rest of the model. Otherwise, it's going to cut it off at a certain distance. Make sure your CAD drawings are turned off. Right? Make sure when you go and import it, the CAD drawings are turned off. Because I got a bunch of CAD lines here. They should not be here. Or you can simply go insert and just turn them off everywhere by manage links and just tell this CAD drawing to be unloaded. Although I must be looking at, these are column grid lines. I'm in Revit 2024. You might not see those, but if you did, you go to VG and you can turn them off. I can turn them all off right here, annotation categories. Just turn them all off. You should not see any weird lines showing up in your model in 3D. You should see a clean 3D model. All right, so you turn off the entire category of annotations. You don't want to see those. So that's what we're doing. Obviously, you know, we built this soffit at the entrance here earlier. you know, it's right in here, and it should have probably a copy of the ceiling up above it at the height of this mullion here, and they should have a wall in between the two, or I would make it a soffit. Right, we've already talked about soffits. So if I were to very quickly draft it, right, if here I'm on the floor plan, I can't see the ceiling. I'm drawing it here, not in a reflective ceiling plan, because in a reflective ceiling plan, the wall shows up at like 6 inches tall, and you're not going to see it up here. So on the floor plan, I'm going to show the ceiling. I'm going to go from the first floor looking up to the second floor, looking up, hit apply. There's the wall right there. So I'm just going to draw a wall called a soffit, like we did earlier, and make sure that that's not a soffit. That's a little too thick, but this needs to be a soffit. And the side with the arrow is going to be metal, so you don't want that facing the lobby. You want to flip it over. And then you want it to align with the walls, right? You want to make sure it lines up with this and lines up with this wall. And then it lines up with this wall here, with the front. And then you want to make sure it's the right height. That's what a section's for. Don't forget to turn off underlay. Always turn off underlay before you leave. And just cut a section through it to make sure it's in the right spot. Right, this soffit is up here somewhere, sitting on top of that ceiling. So I can use the align command, line it up. This one, line it up with this edge, with that top. Oops, don't grab the wrong thing. I'm going to turn on my line weights. This wall lines up with the top of that mullion there. So align to here with the top of that wall right there. There's the soffit. I'm going to copy this up. I'm just going to go straight up with a copy. I'm going to line it up with the top of this wall. And then the wall goes underneath it. So there, that box I just created is the soffit. See that box right there? Again, if you have no idea what we're looking at, launch this section in 3D. Right, figure out what this is called. This is the last section I made, section number 2. Go to 3D and launch section number 2 in 3D and take a tour of it so you can see what we've built. There's the box right there. I built out that box above the entrance right there. That's the soffit above the entrance. And it shows up inside the library. This is like a teal color. And that box is the bulkhead. It's probably hiding mechanical ducts. But that's what we're drawing. Right? So using walls. Tools you already know. You know how to make walls. And now you know how to make ceilings. And a soffit wall is new. Okay. So let's take a break for 15 minutes. I'll let you get started on this project. Start practicing this tool. Come back with questions. Put them in the chat. And I'll help you resolve any issues you're having. Okay. So at 1:45, we'll get back together again. And then look for other problems in your model. I mean, I can tell here there's a problem. See right there? There's a problem right there. You see that? Whenever you see that kind of action happen here in your design, see that right there? That means this floor is inside of another floor. There needs to be a hole in the floor for one pattern to sit inside of. You built these 2 floors on top of each other. That's not great. You need to make a hole. So the hole, like in real life, you wouldn't put a floor down and put another floor on top of it. You leave an opening in the floor, and then inside the opening, you put the other floor. So this is a clear case of a mistake. You can see it here in color. Tour your model. Take a look at that, rotate around the model and see if there's any other problems like that. Now's the time. And come back with questions and I'll help you. I can see that there's a problem here. See that pier is incorrect. This opening is wrong. That opening is wrong. So there's a problem there. It needs to be corrected. All right. So let's take a break. Let me know if you have any problems. Shoot me a chat and we'll talk more after the break. Can you all hear me? Okay, so we're back from the break. Just wanted to check and see if anybody had any questions. Anything whatsoever? Have you guys tried to did you adjust the view range in the floor plan, ceiling plan? No, it didn't have to. Right? If the drawing looks good as is, if I go to the first floor plan here, actually first floor reflected ceiling plan, which again is set up at 8'6". I'm going to delete this section here. Set up at 7'6", looking up. No, it's 7 foot. It's cut at 7'6", and it looks up toward the next level above, which is the underside of the roof, the roof level, and it creates a mirror on the floor and reflects what you see above you, which is why it's called a reflected ceiling plan. If everything looks right here, you shouldn't have to adjust the view range. Now, in this next step, we will have to adjust our view range because something is not going to be correct. So let me show you an example. No, and I will create a new ceiling tile for this area here because these are all 2x6. But so is the security gate. So is the high ceiling. So I'm saving that for the next bit of instruction here. The high ceiling here is going to have a 2x6 grid, and I'm going to use it once I make it for all the other parts of the library. I'm assuming these are all 2x6. We're going to assume they're all 2x6. So this design here is going to be used at the main entrance as well, and above the security desk. So I'll do that here. And then again, take a look at my view range here. I'm on the ceiling first floor. And look at the view range here. This is not changed. I'm cutting through the model at 7'6", and it's looking up at the lower roof. That's how far I can see. I can see from cutting through the model at 7'6", and I can see up to the top of the lower roof. This is the lower roof, top of lower roof. Everything else should be exactly as my settings. Let me know if that's a problem going forward. Now, if we take a look at the lower roof ceiling plan, then what I get is this. if I just in color, right? This is what I get. Which is clearly wrong, because if I look at my my plan here, this is what it should look like. I should see windows. I should see walls. Like here, there's a couple walls on either side. There's windows here. And currently I'm not seeing that here. So again, Revit cuts through the view range, looks down, and the floor becomes a mirror. But when you look down, you can't see through things. Like the walls don't become invisible. So wherever you cut through the model, it cuts through at a certain height, looks down on top of the floor, and reflects whatever's above you on top of the floor. That's why it's called a reflected ceiling plan. So what happened here? Why is it not cutting through my windows? Well, let's look at an elevation. Get rid of some guidelines here, some reference planes. So we're looking at the lower level roof ceiling plan, which is I'm standing on top of this floor here and creating a ceiling plan from this floor. So what does the view range tell us? The view range here, where is it? Let's see here. I got to unselect. Oh, well, I'm on the yeah, let's go back. This is the lower roof plan, and I go to the view range on the ceiling plan. It says edit view range, and it says here, I'm standing on the lower roof, looking up at the top to the roof above me, the upper roof. So I cut through the model at 7'6", cut plane, and the top of the range is 7'6". So from the top of the range here, the top is the next floor above me. So from that floor, looking down to 7'6", it's going to display a reflected ceiling plan on the floor. So where's 7'6"? So I take a look here. Where's 7'6" above 18'5"? Where is above top of lower roof? So if I go to Revit, go to reference plane, pick line, offset it, 7'6". Above this is right there. Right there. So you're saying to Revit, cut through this building here, show me everything between 7'6" and this floor above me on the floor. That's what you're telling Revit. Show me what's happening between the cut line, 7'6", and the floor above me, upper roof. Show me that information between these two levels on top of this floor plan called top of lower roof. So you can see where the problem is. It's not cutting through the windows. This cut line needs to be somewhere like cutting through the windows here. If it was cutting through the windows here, then show what's happening between this line and the top of the upper roof. Show me that information on the floor plan as a reflection. But then I'm cutting through the windows. Anywhere. So if I do a distance here, this is 3'6". So cutting through the building at 3'6", cut plane, will guarantee it cuts through these windows. Anything above this floor, below that roof, anywhere will show me the reflected ceiling plan. So the ceiling plan is basically show me everything between the cut, this cut line, and the upper range. Show me that space on the reflection on the floor. So if I cut through this at 3'6" or something, I'm on the ceiling plan. If I come in here and I go to view range, and I don't cut through the building at 7'6", instead I cut through it at 3'6", it's guaranteed to cut through the windows. And there they are. And now you can start working. Because until you do that, you're going to have an empty drawing. Because you cut through the roof, and now you're looking inside the roof. Well, That's not going to help you because you can't see the windows. So you have to adjust the view range to show you the information you want to see. And so it's the exact opposite of the floor plan view range. Floor plan view range shows you everything happening between here and here. Cut through the building here, look down on top of the floor, show me what you see. The reflective ceiling plan view range cuts through here, looks up to here, and shows you everything happening between this and this as a reflection on the floor. So obviously if I cut through the roof, I'm looking between here and here, and I see a bunch of nothing except for inside the roof. Showing that on top of the floor, which will be nothing except for the roof outline. So you got to make sure you understand how to use view ranges on the reflective ceiling plan. But I fixed it here. So the rest is pretty easy. The rest is simply tracing the areas of the roof with a 2x6 design. Like a floor, you need to make a 2x6 design and then place it on the roof. And then if you look at the drawing, you simply need to trace out like that piece of ceiling right there and draw this piece of ceiling here because the corners are cut at a 45-degree angle. You need to draw those as individual ceilings across around the outside of the building, and then draw another big ceiling inside the building here and here. I'm going to assume that this little box out here is gypboard. I don't know if that's a gypboard ceiling at the bottom of the high ceiling, or is that looking at the one we saw earlier below the main entrance? Like, I don't know where they drew this from. So I would check the photographs. Let's see. Well, it looks to me here that there's a little piece of drywall right there between the storefront and the edge of the lobby. It looks like they didn't complete this area here. It seems kind of random to me in terms of like stopping the ceiling right there. Feel free to make that up. Or, you know, make that ceiling go all the way to the storefront. Make a change. That looks like a mistake. But they're definitely showing this down here, this diffuser down here underneath the lobby entrance. That's what they're really showing. And the question was, if you don't have a lower roof ceiling plan, can you just duplicate one of the others and adjust the view range? Well, it's whatever you called it. Whatever you call this drawing, this level is the floor plan. Whatever that's called. If you don't have this ceiling plan, then you can delete it and make it again. Like whatever's showing up here in the ceiling plans should match the floor plan level name. But if you're not getting what you want, you can delete the ceiling. Again, it depends on what it's called. So if you're having trouble, let me delete this for a second and check something for you. Okay. These ceiling plans, if they're misnamed or they just don't show up correctly, well, just delete them all then. Highlight them, right click, delete them. And then make them again. So right now, I don't have any ceiling plans at all. So if that's the case, you can go up to View you can go to plan views and you can create reflective ceiling plans. Every level that does not have a reflective ceiling plan will be available to make one. So for example, I can make a reflective ceiling plan of the first floor. I can make a reflective ceiling plan of the lower roof, this one. I can make a reflective ceiling plan of the upper roof, which doesn't make any sense because that's the sky. But if I want to make the first floor reflective ceiling plan, I just hit OK. It adds it to the list. Here, first floor. If I'm missing the the lower roof, I would go back to view, plan views, and make a reflective ceiling plan of the lower roof. Hit OK. It makes it of the lower roof. Now, again, it goes back to the standard settings, right? The standard settings are view range, 7'6". It should be 3'6". Apply. There's your windows. You can start working now. Let's make a ceiling up here, and then I'll figure out the height of the ceiling. Well, let's do it. Let's do it now quickly. You know, we can figure out the height of the ceiling. This ceiling needs to be somewhere from here down to the floor, which is I can barely tell what that is there. 23 feet. Let's start with 23 feet, for example. We'll fix it in a second. Anywhere below this point right here. Now this is about 23 foot 11. So the top of the ceiling needs to be below 23 foot 11. Or the top needs to be aligned with 23 foot 11. But if I go to the lower level roof plan here, I can make a ceiling, which I want to sketch because I don't have walls to work with. And I use the line command there, and I can simply go corner to corner and draft some edges here and trim the connections and connect the dots, right? So I can just simply, do something like this and trim that to here. And temporarily, I'll make it a 2x2 ceiling grid, and it disappears. It disappeared because I didn't give it a height. The height was incorrect. So if I go to 3D, I can find it. Where did it go? It put it up here, floating in the sky, right there. I'll make it from the top of the roof. The lower roof is up. It's 8 foot higher than the lower roof. But from the first floor, I'll make it 23 feet. And so then I should see it at the right, close to the right height in an elevation or a building section, whatever you prefer. So if I take a look at this elevation here, I should see a ceiling floating above. You see it right there? It's floating right there. In this view, I can simply attach it to the bottom of that roof, align it to the bottom of that roof, to the top of that ceiling. This ceiling should be at 23 feet 8 3/4 if I'm using a 2x2 acoustical tile ceiling. It also depends on the thickness of the ceiling. So I'm using acoustical tile, so I'll put it right there. So now I know where to put the future ceilings here. If I look at the lower roof ceiling, there's a ceiling right there. And then I can continue to make the rest of them, right? So you want to keep drafting all these parts, right? So you just use some sketches and you connect the dots, right? So I can just connect the dots here and just trace around the roof. Cancel that. I used a shortcut and my ceiling, my design turned black and white. I don't know what shortcut I used. Let me fix this for a second here, in case this happens to you. I think one of my properties here got messed up. Colors, background color here. Using a dark mode, I use a light mode. Hit OK. Okay, back to normal. All right, so draw a ceiling right there. Again, I drew a ceiling, but actually I did not. I didn't accept it. So I should have continued to work. So if I draw a ceiling and I connect the dots, right? You just draw it and connect the dots. Corner to corner to corner up to here. and then align, and then trim the edges. Then this is the, I mean, there's something off about this. I am going to turn off the line weights, and I can see that it's off. It should line up with this. This should line up with this. And now it's perfectly tracing the edges. That's why that thick line command doesn't work sometimes. It's basically that shape right there. So you'll draw each piece individually. I should have fixed the height, but I didn't. So the height here is, the height of this ceiling is first floor, and it's 23 feet. I think we made that 23 8 3/4. I believe that's where we settled, which is right there. And then I copy that to this one. From the first floor up to 23 foot 8 3/4 in this case. You see they connect together. Another quick way of doing it in Revit is simply just align the top of this to the top of that. AL is a line. Hover here. It grabs the top of that ceiling. Grab the top of this ceiling. Now they're lined up. It's another quick way of drawing that. So you'll trace the edge of the ceiling all the way around, and then you'll make the one on the inside, right? You'll quickly make the one on the inside. You know, you'll sketch it out, or you'll, whatever tool you find easiest. But if I simply just make it one big. All right, so, and again, I didn't adjust the height. So align to the top of this with the top of this. Okay, now they're all in the same spot. Okay, so there's my ceiling so far. So the trouble is, I want that to be 2 by 6. So you'll do the exact same steps we used for the floor. So in the floor, we made a new material. We gave it a 2 by 6 grid. We gave it a color. And then we replace it we made a floor type. Do the same here. Exact same steps. Click on the ceiling. Here's a ceiling 2 by 2. Duplicate it. Make it a new ceiling. Let's say call it John's 2 by 6. Hit OK. It's 2¼ inches thick. Go to the structure. So this is what it's made out of. It has a layer of acoustical tile that's 24 by 24. That's the material. That's what you'll see. This needs to change to look like a 2 by 6, not 24 by 24. So that's a material you need to create. So I'll take that material and I'll duplicate it, and I'll call it, I don't know, John's ceiling 2 by 6. So here's John's ceiling 2 by 6. It's gonna go, you go to appearance and make sure that says 0. Yes or no. If it doesn't, use that button right there, duplicate this asset. It does say 0, so we're good. Ignore appearance, we're focusing on graphics. What do you want this ceiling to be when it's colored? Well, when it's colored, maybe I want it to be orange, but that's the color of the design. So maybe I want it to be orange color. Okay, fine. What do I want the surface pattern to be? Right now, it's called out as a 2 by 2. I want a 2 by 6. If I click on this list under model, these are all to scale. They're exactly these dimensions, these sizes here. There is no 2 by 6. So you'll have to make one. So use a little piece of paper here with a little star on it. Click. That makes it brand new pattern. What do you want it to be called? How about John's 2 by 6? I'll call it John's 2 by 6 grid. Okay, what do you want it to look like? Well, I don't want it to be a bunch of horizontal lines. I want it to be a crosshatch. What angle do you want? 0. What spacing do you want? I want it to be 2 feet by 6 feet. Hit apply. It's now added to the list. Hit apply. So now this ceiling called John's ceiling 2 by 6 has a 2 by 6 grid on it, and it's orange. So if I accept that, and accept that, and accept that, this thing here that I highlighted will change to that design, right? If I go shaded, and you line up the edges. Whichever way you want, you line up this to this, for example. There's the ceiling design. So grab your entire ceiling, maybe grab the entire ceiling here and replace it with a 2x2 John ceiling. Grab this. Don't grab it in the entire project because you don't want to grab your acoustical tile everywhere and change it to a 2x6. It's not supposed to be a 2x6. Just these new ceilings here. If you're having trouble grabbing it's really hard to grab a ceiling when there's a mullion here. It's really tricky. So I would grab this ceiling here, go filter, and then turn everything off except for ceilings, and it'll grab it by itself. That's the only ceiling it finds. And that ceiling's going to change to John's 2x6. And there's the design. And then you can line these up if you like, whatever you want to do there. And line up this grid with this grid. It lines up nicely. So there's the design. So you'll complete this. I can use that design for the front entrance now. I can use that design for the security desk. I now have a new ceiling that looks this way, just like you did with the floor. Give it a new material. The material controls what it looks like. So then the material needs to be whatever color you want and whatever grid pattern you want. If you don't have a grid pattern, make one. So if I go back to the lower level ceiling plan here, I can grab this grid here and turn it into John's 2x6. And then I can adjust the spacing. Maybe I want to line it up with this and maybe line it up with that and make it a little nicer. That's complete. You're completely free to do that. Again, these drawings you're turning in, all the drawings you're turning in are always black and white. The only color drawings you can turn in are the ones in 3D, like perspectives, but everything else should be black and white. Okay, so that's the ceiling right there above the entrance. So the only thing that's left to do really is the security gate, the security ceiling here. You guys can work out the rest of this. Just remember though that because these are like the roof, if I grab the ceiling and I go edit boundary and I draw something inside the ceiling, or if I draw something outside the ceiling, Revit's going to let me do this. You can't do this with a roof. You can't draw a ceiling outside the original shape of the roof. You can't draw another roof. We can't draw two shapes of roofs in the roof command, but you can do it with the ceiling command. And what do you think this was going to become? James, what do you think this is going to become when I draw a shape inside of this ceiling here? Is that a new ceiling?
What it's going to become?
Yeah, what will this become? Will that become a new ceiling, or will it do something else to this ceiling?
Become a new ceiling?
Nope, it actually will become a hole.
We'll just cut it out.
Yeah, when you draw a shape inside of another shape, it becomes a hole, an opening. When you draw it separately, it becomes a new ceiling. So for example, here, if I accept that, let me turn off this high ceiling here. I'm going to hide it for a second there. You see, there's the ceiling right there. So when you draw, you can draw ceilings separate from each other in the same shape and the same boundary, but you can't change their heights. I mean, this is going to be always the same height as this one. They were drawn at the same time. When you draw a shape inside of another shape, it makes an opening, a cutout in the ceiling. So if I go back, so if I don't want that hole in here, I go edit profile and just delete this hole. If I don't want this extra ceiling, delete that ceiling and it goes away. Does anybody remember what the other command was to make a hole in the ceiling and the roof and the floor? Instead of using edit boundary and drawing a hole, what's another way to make an opening? Lindsay? Remember?
Sorry, what was that?
How do you cut a hole out of a ceiling if I'm not drawing a hole here in the boundary? If I'm not drawing a boundary here, how do I cut a hole out of the ceiling? Is there another way to draw a hole in the ceiling?
I'm trying to remember because that's usually the only way I would do it.
Yeah. How about Rahaf? You remember?
The split command.
No. Split command will change the materials. So split face will let me grab the ceiling and take a piece of it and turn it into a different material. But it won't cut a hole out of it. Literally cut a hole out of it. The opening command. Yes. Kara, that's correct. So here is a shaft. The shaft cuts holes out of ceilings, floors, and roofs. So if I go to the floor plan here, and I were to draw a shaft, I'll just draw a shaft like a little ellipse or something. And I hit accept. And that shaft happens to touch the ceiling, it'll cut a hole out of the ceiling. If that shaft goes through the floor, it'll cut a hole in the floor. If that shaft intersects the roof, well, where's my roof? Where's the roof? I must have turned them off. Unhide this roof. He will cut a hole through the roof too. One shaft will do all this work. It will cut through the roof, anything horizontal. If you don't want to cut a hole through the floor, make sure it's not touching the floor. Make sure it's above the floor. If you don't want it to cut through the roof, make sure it goes below the roof. Otherwise, it will cut through the roof. So a quick way of doing that is simply draw a shaft. So when you've got multiple things that need to be cut open, like a floor and a ceiling, you probably don't want to use the edit boundary command because you then have to make two holes, one in the floor and one in the ceiling separate. Instead, just use a shaft. It'll do the work in one step, and then it can be deleted when you want to remove it. You don't have to draft anything. You don't have to edit boundary, draw the shape, and accept it, and then do the same thing to the floor. It all is taken care of in one step. So hopefully that helps you guys build your designs when you have that kind of situation. All right, so in the ceiling plan of the first level, we know that there's a security desk here, but there aren't any measurements for it, unfortunately. They don't have any measurements for this thing here, except if you go to 1 on A7-2, I was expecting this to be like a blown up floor plan, and they disappointed me, and they only have like a cross section, 1 on A7-2. And so if we do a little exploring here, on 1 on A7-2, here, all right, take a look. This is a section cut through the ceiling. And all they give me is, for example, 8 1/4 for the thickness of this beam. And they tell me the beam is 14 inches tall. So this is the perimeter around the design. It's 8 1/4 and 14 inches tall. There's a hole here. And then inside the design, there's like these panels. These are acoustical wood planks panels here. Below this piece of metal here is surrounding the edges. And there's light fixtures in there. And then there's openings. But it's 14 inches tall, and it's 8 1/4 along the edges. And they got these panels. So you can build that here using the floor plan. In fact, the reflective ceiling plan. Just knowing some of that information, right? So we know, let me go back. Ceiling plan is here. So if we look at this, we know, for example, that around the edges of this design is 8 1/4. So it must be this piece here. That's 8 1/4. These are 2 by 6. We talked about that earlier. There's a hole here and a hole here. And this outside metal piece around the outside edge is 14 inches thick. So we can start by designing the wood ceiling inside here and then put a piece of trim around the outside that is 14 inches thick and maybe aluminum. So you can draw that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So this thing is 32 feet by 18, because these are all 6 inches, 6 feet. So 32 by 18. I think that's about right. So if I draw that shape as a ceiling temporarily, an acoustical tile ceiling, I sketch it out. You can go from the center of the column, and you can make an adjustment here. So this thing here, it gives me a weird dimension, but I'm going to click on that little dot and drag it down to here. And that tells me it's 32 feet, 33 feet. I want it to be 32 feet, right? So I just type 32. Okay. What about the width? Now, the width here, they tell me from here to here, it's to the edge of the column. I'm going to grab the little dot and drag it to the center of the column, and that should be exactly 18 feet. Okay. So this is the wood ceiling. I hit accept. I make it the wood ceiling because I made it earlier, so I'm going to use that. There's the wood ceiling. I'm not sure if it's in the right direction. I don't think it is. It should be going left to right, not top to bottom. So you can quickly change that by grabbing one of these grid lines and rotating them. Just simply starts anywhere on the screen, just type 90 degrees. And then make sure it aligns up, line it up to the edges just so it's nice. So there's the ceiling so far. And then here, I want it to be centered between, these grid lines. So what is this number here? Just do a little tape measure. What is this? 14 inches. So half of that, I need to move this up half of 14 inches, which is 7 inches. Okay, so there, now it's centered. There's a couple of holes in here. All right, we can see the holes, they're right here. There's a hole right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 panels and 1 panel deep is an opening right there. So again, you can draw it here. I probably need to see where it's at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like right here, this guideline. Right here somewhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a little guideline here, reference plane. You need to know where that's at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I need a reference plane to show me where it's at, top to bottom. Because as soon as I edit this model, the grid disappears. So I need some guidelines to show me where that opening is supposed to be. Right, I do a reference plane to show me. So when I click here and I go edit, then I just connect the dots. Right, I just make a line from here to here, and I make a line from here to here. I'll make a line from here to there. And then you're gonna cut these openings out of here because they don't belong. You need to cut this in half, otherwise you're gonna lose the entire line. So that's where the split line command, the split element command, SL, I'm gonna cut that line in half because I want to trim this and not lose that line. Now I can trim this one separately and trim this. And there's the wood. Right, there's the wood. This ceiling is at 11'4". 11'4", right? If I take a look at it in the floor plan as a perspective, I can go here and do a little perspective camera and take a look at it. And there it is. So can everyone do that? Rotate the grid. You grab one of the lines and use the rotate command. All right, grab any line, any ceiling line, use the rotate command, start anywhere you want, and just type an angle. I type 90 degrees. But this is a ceiling that's floating in space at 11'4". around the outside edges of the ceiling is a piece of metal that's 14 inches thick. So I don't own that ceiling, but I should make one. I'll make that ceiling, right? So here's what I have so far. I've got, if I go to my ceiling command, I've got chipboard and what have you, but I don't have this thick 14-inch thick ceiling. So let me grab chipboard, for example, and duplicate it. John's aluminum aluminum circulation desk ceiling. And here, I need to make this ceiling 14 inches thick. So I'll grab this piece of drywall and I'll move it up, get rid of this piece of metal, I don't need it, and make this ceiling out of aluminum. And then I'll accept it. It has no patterns, but it looks like aluminum. And it's 14 inches thick. So this changes here to 14 inches, right? Because that's how big it is. And then I'll simply trace the ceiling. And this outside edge is going to be here. They showed like a 8 1/4 dimension around this thing. So I'm going to go rectangle. And I'm going to use 8 1/4 offset. So when I trace it, it gets bigger by 8 1/4. I'm just going to put it here. I'm going to accept it. There's the ceiling. If I take a look at that in my perspective view I just looked at earlier, there's a ceiling right there. It's at 11'4". There it is. Don't forget to turn off the fire clip. See that white stuff back there? Turn that off. So the only thing that's missing is this ceiling here is razor thin. It should have a wall on top of it here that picks up the distance, so that this doesn't look like it's only 2 inches thick. It's going to be much thicker. It's going to be as thick as this. So you need to trace these edges here with another wall or soffit or some other object to fill the gap so that it looks more like the photographs. Right? You see, this is the wood. There's a piece of metal right there. That's much taller. That's 14 inches. I mean, this piece of here is the one we just built. That's 14 inches. So inside these openings, on top of this wall ceiling, make a little soffit, make it the top to the top of the piece of metal on the outside. You guys can do that. If you want this to be gray, you simply tell aluminum become gray. Yeah, tell aluminum here, it's not white, it is gray. Right, so now it's gray. Or dark gray, or whatever you want it to be. You're going to make an adjustment there. But this is all at 11'4". That's the security gate ceiling. And if I take a look at it here, there it is. And you can see the problem here. This guy's too thin. You need to make a little tiny wall along these edges here to fill that gap. Or maybe make this ceiling really, really thick. But it's going to make it thick everywhere, right? So everywhere I used it, it's going to be 14 inches thick, and that's not going to be right. Maybe you want to duplicate it. You guys can decide how to put a little panel right here to close off this little opening here. It should be traced on both sides. In the ceiling plan, there's another little thing here. You can see in the product, it looks like this thing's about. Looks like it's, well, it does stick out from the column. I thought it was more centered on the column, but it looks like it sticks out over from the column center line to the back of this line. So it's fine. feel free to adjust your design. You see here, this piece is sticking out the back of the column. I'm just going to move it over. I'm just going to grab the, oops. I'm just going to grab the ceiling. Hold down Shift to remove this column and this column. Keep everything else in blue and just shift it over half the distance, which is 4 1/8. Uh-oh. Grab this, remove the column, we can shift and move it over 4 1/8 inches. Okay, there. Because I didn't want this thing to poke out the edge of the column there. So there's the security gate. Take a look at it in a perspective and make sure it's right. You know, here it is in front of you. Right, there's a ceiling. It should be taller right here. It's not so skinny. Okay, so we're making new ceiling designs the same way we made new floor pattern designs with materials. Materials decide what they look like, what color they are. Perspectives are the only thing that should be in 3D. Isometric and perspective view should be in 3D. Everything else should be in black and white. You're only turning in 2 sheets this week. The first floor reflective ceiling plan and the lower roof reflective ceiling plan. That's the only, and they should both be black and white, and then all the CAD drawings should be turned off. Any questions on any of this that I've covered? Does this all make sense? Ella, you have any questions? Ella, are you in class? Yep. No, no questions? Gabriella? Greta? That's all I have to teach this week. I'll give you some techniques you can use for your other projects outside of this class. Just very simple stuff we've covered in the past, just to show you what's possible. You know, let me just do a new project to show you. You know, as an example. Stairs comes up in the future class. I'm not going to cover stairs. That'll take a couple hours. But as far as ceilings are concerned, if I sketch out a ceiling, right? Sketch out a ceiling. It's a 2x4 ceiling, and I accept it. And it is at what height? The ceiling plan is here. So this is at 9 feet in the air. Okay, so I've got a ceiling. Let me just make a perspective out of it. So I'm taking a look at the ceiling here. Okay, so there's a ceiling in front of me. Okay, so you can make ceilings slope. Yeah, I'll answer that question in a second. If you want to make a ceiling slope, you can. So I can go to the ceiling plan here. You click on the ceiling and you go edit boundary. You don't have the tools that we had last week on adjusting sub-elements. Like I can't grab this corner and lift it up off the ground, and I can't grab this edge. I can't add points to the ceiling to adjust their heights. So I'm kind of out of luck in that regard. However, I can use this thing called slope arrow, and I can drag an arrow from one side of the ceiling to the other. And if I click on that arrow, I can tell it where the tail is going to be and where the head is going to be of the arrow, height-wise. So right here it says that height at the tail. Level at the tail is default. So the default level is the height of the ceiling. 8 feet, 9 feet, 10 feet, whatever it is, that's the default. So currently this ceiling is at 9 feet. And then it says here, the height offset at the tail is a foot. So right now, this edge here where that dot is, this edge here is 1 foot higher than the entire height of the ceiling. And then the head is at the default ceiling height. This head over here is the arrowhead, and it height's 0. So this is staying put at the original height of the ceiling. This one here is a foot above the original size. And so this ceiling is going to slope from here down to there because the arrow is making it slope. So if I drag a section through here and take a look at it, you see it's sloping. There's the ceiling right there, sloping downward right there. That's how you make a ceiling slope. With click here, edit boundary, and put a slope arrow, and go from start to finish to your slope arrow. Go from start to finish. You can only make one of these things. So if you want it to slope from here to here, I'd put the arrow from here to there. You can delete them if you need to, but when you click on it, you can make the changes right here. You can do this. This is the height of tail method, and the other method is to use the slope method. Like this is going to slope 4 and 12, for example. Maybe I want it to be 6 and 12. It's going to be pretty steep. Maybe I want it to be 2 and 12. So this is going to slope 2 and 12. You can use that, or you can just use the height of tail method, where this is a number that you adjust, and it makes it higher than the other side. Either side you can change. So I got that. So what happens then if I'm on the floor plan and I show myself the ceiling plan with underlay? Right, here's underlay. Between the first level and the second level, looking up, is the reflective ceiling plan right there. If I draw a wall or a soffit, let's draw a soffit. Here. The soffit right there. So here's a 3D model. The soffit should be taller than the ceiling. Okay, here. So here it is. So this soffit is basically connecting to the higher roof above this ceiling, or the higher ceiling above this ceiling. And it's making a shelf. And on top of this shelf, you can put like lights or something, like a light cove, right? So around these edges here will be a light cove. Lights up here, shining up at the higher ceiling that's above this ceiling. But the soffit here needs to be connected to that. So you can use the same command we learned last class in the roof class, attach top to base. But that'll take the top of the wall and attach it to the bottom or base of the ceiling. All right, if I chose the ceiling, it's going to do this, which is not what I want. I want it to be on top of the wall. So what you do is you grab the walls and you use attach top to base, and over here you check the base box. So it's going to attach the bottom or base of the thing here in blue, to the next thing I select. So the bottom of this selected to this ceiling is going to attach the bottom. So there's a soffit. You guys understand what I mean about a light cove and the soffit on this design around this edge here? Yeah, you kind of get the idea. And the same thing can happen with you can do a light cove inside of here even. You just have to cut a hole out of the ceiling. All right, just take this ceiling and edit type and then just make an opening inside of it. And it makes maybe this is the light cove. Maybe I can see inside of here. And it shines up on that ceiling there. And there's glowing with light along these edges here. So you make an opening inside there. Just make sure that the soffit gypboard is facing the hole. Otherwise, this is going to be gray. It's going to be the metal. So remember this is like a backwards wall. The arrow is facing where the metal is, not where the gypboard's at. So you got to make sure it's facing the right direction. But there's a light cove right here you can build up there. A little soffit right inside there. And or you can line it up and make it like a raised ceiling. Just line that up with the edge of the opening and make it a raised ceiling. Usually you can just simply just make this transparent. You can see where the walls are, right? So if I align these edges here, like on the walls, you see the metal is back here facing the back, so that's good. The gypboard's facing the front, so that's good. You need to test all the edges. But there's a raised ceiling. Like this is lower ceiling, and it goes up to a higher ceiling up here. So that's how you would do it. So last thing I want to mention is don't feel like you have to use a floor, a roof, or a ceiling for, well, I mean, typically you want to use a floor to build a floor, correct? But when it comes to ceilings, the ceilings might not have the tool that you need to build the shape that you want for a ceiling. For example, because I don't have the commands for a flat roof to adjust the heights of the ceiling, I can't make this shape do something like this. If I did a roof and the roof was flat and didn't have any slope at all, gotta get rid of these triangles. Otherwise, you're not gonna get the tools. So turn off all the edges here, turn off the slope. And if I accept it, then that roof here has adjust sub-elements. Ceilings do not. So I can grab this roof and go adjust sub-elements and grab this corner here and make it, instead of 12 feet, make it 16 feet in the air. This one over here, sub-element, that's 12'9", make it 16 feet in the air. So imagine this is a piece of paper laying on top of a table. I grab this corner and I lift it up off the ground. The rest of the paper lays flat. Right, so effectively what I'm making is this. Right? So if you had to build a ceiling that looks like this, you probably don't want to use the ceiling command. You probably want to use the roof command. So just because the command is called roof doesn't mean it has to be a roof. It could become a ceiling if you want to do something a little more extravagant, right? Because this has the ability to warp with add sub. So does floors. Floors can do the same thing. So maybe you don't want to be restricted to the ceiling command, where I don't have adjust sub-elements. I think I should, but they don't have them. So you might want to decide not to build a ceiling using a ceiling after all. You want to use maybe the roof tool. Hope that makes sense. You're looking for a command that has the tools to let you build what you're after, regardless of what the command is called. Don't feel like you're stuck using the ceiling command just to make ceilings. Look for the tool that has the options that you need to build what you're after. That's the important thing. Back in week one, I've given you all a document. I thought it was in week one. Let's see, I'm gonna pull it up here. I give you guys a schedule of the quizzes that are coming up, and so we're here on the reflective ceiling plan. Last week we read this chapter called Finishes, Schedules, and Finish Plans. The entire schedule, the entire chapter. This week we're gonna look at lighting, RCP, structural systems for buildings, mechanical and plumbing. The entire chapter. Those are short chapters. The next quiz is gonna be next week, and it's gonna be on these chapters and that chapter there. So that's coming next week. So I don't cover the chapter because you can read the entire chapter to figure out what's in the quiz. I think that'll be the last quiz. Stairs is something we'll learn in the future on how to build stairs. I'll give you some tutorials. unless you really have to make stairs now, then I can share a video to show you how to make stairs. If you need it for another class, I can show you now. I mean, not now in class, but I can share a video to show you how to build stairs. Any other questions? Any other things that you're thinking about building as far as ceilings are concerned that you might need some help with, or specifically on this project that might be confusing still, that I perhaps didn't record? No. Okay. Yeah, you can yeah, I do have a video for stairs. Let me check. Let me check my announcements here for a second. In the previous announcements, I have something called weekly class videos. If you launch that weekly class videos link, right, everyone has these links here. Weekly class video links. If I launch this link and I follow this playlist, one of those videos has to do with stairs. So this one here makes stairs. So if you want to learn how to make stairs, take a look at that video. It won't be required for this project, but if you want to build stairs, I would watch that video. Any other questions? Everybody has everything they need to be successful in this project? Okay, well, this is a short class. There's not much to talk about. Ceilings are pretty simple. Start working on the project. See you next week. I'll be in class, and enjoy the rest of the week. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye now. I'll upload this video when it's processed. Thank you.